and James Sam, 1320 Kings Insider. Hammer, what's happening, my brother?
Yeah, I didn't know I was supposed to comb my hair like Matt. He had it going there.
Matt was looking smooth. He had the beard lined up today too. Everything.
Yeah.
He was taking Easter picks yesterday. I think that's what it was. He did the Georges. Yeah, it was Easter picks.
He looked good.
I'm not keeping up with the Georges. It's okay.
I didn't go anywhere, so I didn't get the fresh lineup. So
yeah.
I did shave my head yesterday before I went to church. Went to Easter Sunday service. Yeah. Shaved my head.
A good Sunday head shaving for Kenny. Got to go look like an Easter egg.
What do you put on top? What do you put on top of it after the shave?
Nothing. I have naturally good moisturized scalp.
You got a good shiny
head. Anything on my head.
Wow.
Yeah.
You didn't do like the towel, like.
I could just put the towel. Like somebody told me about that. Like typically, I've been blessed with good naturally moisturized skin in general. Like I just put lotion on. Always put hands are always lotion, face, all that stuff. But like people put a lot of chemicals, say on the bald head or on their face because their face dries out and stuff. Never had to deal with any of that. Naturally, just
got good skin.
Aren't you special? Like I'm the exact opposite. I've been using Proactive for a decade because of how trashy my skin is. Like, you got to be kidding me. If you're bragging about how great your skin is, kiss my ass. I've kept Proactive in business for the last decade.
Well, look, you have to work on your skin, but you kept your hairline. I don't have to work on my skin. I lost my hairline.
Give and take.
Let's be careful when we say I've kept my hairline. I have enhanced my hairline in recent weeks. Let's call it what it is. James, we were just talking with Matt George about Harrison Barnes, and I've been on this kick that I think Harrison Barnes' trade value this offseason is as high as it's ever been because obviously the expiring contract, but in this offseason versus, waiting till February, waiting till the trade deadline, you have teams, potentially contending teams, potentially, playoff teams who are looking to go from like an 8 or a 7 seed up to a, or a 2 or a 3 seed or even a 1 seed. They don't want Harrison Barnes for a couple of months. They want Harrison Barnes through the grind of a season. And I feel like if, and I'm not advocating for the Kings to move him, but I feel like if they wanted to, they'd probably have plenty of suitors this offseason.
Yeah, I think the big thing too is that he's eligible for an extension. So anytime you sign a deal that's 3 years or longer, and you enter the final year of that deal, you can actually sign an extension this summer, which is something that I've been promoting. That if the Kings are going to keep Harrison Barnes this season, then you probably should try to work out an extension. I think the only way that works is if you're actually, making moves that help the team and give you a shot to actually move into the playoff picture and above. And that would be the only way that I think that you can actually talk him into it. If not, he's been through a lot here and I get it. So I wouldn't be totally shocked to see him get moved this summer. Especially, the way he answered the question about whether he would give his input about the coaching search, and he just kind of laughed it off and said, yeah, they're not going to ask me anything. Those kind of things, it was a laugher. But at the same time, it kind of shows you where his mindset is. Like, look, I'm probably not the person they're going to hit up for questions like that. And so, yeah, I mean, his value's high. You can probably get, I would say, anywhere from late lottery to the 20th pick in the draft would be sort of my range for what his value would be. And then on top of that, probably a solid young player, not someone with like incredible potential, but someone who could actually be a rotational player down the road.
So you think that Davion in your first rounder this year nets you far more than what you can get from maybe Harrison in, I don't know, future pick or second round, something like that? Like Davion, your best trading chip, if you're the Kings, is this year's first rounder and Davion Mitchell over Harrison Barnes?
No, I think Harrison Barnes is worth more.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that Harrison Barnes is worth more. And that's not a slight on Davion. He's just a young player who he showed some stuff when given like a huge opportunity, but most people know that those opportunities aren't going to be around. And the second you take a player, we've talked about this, it's just like buying a car. The second that you draft a player, they lose 30% of their value. So I think you could probably move off of Davion, and there might be a team that looks at him and says, "Hey, we think he's a long-term answer to our point guard problem, and we're going to go with someone like that." Especially if they had a really solid, high-scoring shooting guard with size. I think you could see a team that would be willing to jump in. But overall, I think Harrison Barnes, I mean, he's 30 years old. He takes immaculate care of his body. He always has. He's a pro's pro, total community guy. Actually, he's 29. He's not 30 yet. But, he's one of those guys that is about as good a pro as you're going to be able to bring in. And that's why he has tremendous value to the Kings as well, and why they haven't moved off of him, because it's more than just basketball when it comes to Harrison.
And another thing we were talking about, doesn't that just create another problem? If you move Harrison off the three, it's like, okay, well, what are we going to do to replace Harrison Barnes now?
Yeah, at a minimum, you need one more Harrison. Yeah, I mean, that's what this team needs. They don't have to. I mean, it would be great if they go out and get another Sabonis or Fox quality player, one of those players that are way up there, that has potential to be an all-star and all that stuff. But just getting a level of Harrison Barnes, which is an extremely high-level player, a guy who can play 33 to 35 minutes a night, that shoots between 38 and 42% from three, who can rebound and pass and do all the things that Harrison can do. You need another one of those level players at a minimum if you're the Kings this offseason. And that's where I fit, John Collins. John Collins might be a tier slightly higher than Harrison, but maybe not. Guys like Jeremy Grant, there are a lot of players in the league that are around that quality, but the Kings just don't have enough of it. They have a lack of depth of talent. So they have talent, but it's not all top tier talent. They need a true third option, or even maybe a true second option to help everybody kind of solidify themselves and take a step up.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I say, like, your Rashawn Holmes, your picks this year and next year, and Davion Mitchell, that should be what you're going to the negotiating table with. You know what I mean? And then, little expirings here or there, like Justin Holiday or, something like that. But it shouldn't be for anybody that, well, I'll put it to you like this. It shouldn't necessarily be for Harrison Barnes. It shouldn't be for Sabonis and Fox at all. But I think maybe because of the team that you're trying to build, your goal to reach in the playoffs, it'd be counterintuitive to move on from Harrison Barnes to, like we just talked about, filling one hole and opening up a whole another one. So it should be this year, next year's pick, Davion and Rashawn Holmes. That's what you should be trying to flaunt in front of people to make a deal. Not
I think a ton of expiring contracts. Again, I'm not even sold that the Kings are going to move on from Davion Mitchell. I don't think that there's a reason they need to at all. I think he's going to be a really, really good third guard in the league. There are times where he can start for you, and you're going to have to figure out if he can play with Fox, but I don't see that as a huge issue. He's not like Tyrese Halliburton, where the only way he's super impactful is if he has the ball in his hands. He's not a true lead guard still in my book. And while he shows lead guard skills, there are plenty of guards in the league that, when given opportunity, can put up, really solid numbers. So I'm not sure that they're ready to move off of Davion. We talk about that because of the way they handled Halliburton. They turned basically the number 12 pick into an all-star. And that's because they got the pick right, and Halliburton's a really good player, but it's also because, that it just worked out that that's who Indiana wanted, and, you're able to bring in a 25-year-old two-time all-star in exchange for him. I think that, again, when we look at Rashawn Holmes has value. Not to totally discount his off-court stuff, but I'm going to totally discount his off-court stuff because none of it is criminal, and most of it's rumor and innuendo, and these things happen in long, drawn out, prolonged custody battles and stuff. And I don't know what's true and what's not there. And I'm not going to make judgment on any of it one way or another. But I still think that in the NBA, a player who does what he does and has a contract that he has is still very marketable around the league. And I don't think people are going to really, go all that deep into the off court stuff when they're looking to acquire him. And then, we've talked about it. They have Harkless and Len and Trey Lyles and Justin Holiday and Terrence Davis. All of those are expiring contracts. They've got a lot of those types of assets. They've got a bunch of second-round picks. I think they do have enough to go get another big-time, asset, another big-time player. And if the only way that I'm trading Harrison Barnes is if I'm getting like the 25-year-old version of Harrison Barnes, where you're getting a guy who's going to be with you for a long time, who's locked up under contract, but you're shaving years off of your timeline of what Harrison has. And I think Harrison fits with a lot of teams that are trying to win now and can bring him in and lock him up. But I also think the Kings are looking at that, 23, 24, 25, 26-year-old range right now, because that's where Fox and Sabonis are.
He's one of the most, if not the most interesting King to watch this offseason to me, because I feel like you said there, James, I feel like he has so much value. We're just getting started in our conversation here with 1320 Kings insider James Ham. He wrote some things in Sunday Musings that I think are worth bringing here to the conversation as it relates to the Kings' search for a new head coach. So we'll dive into that. Plus, we'll get James' thoughts on some of the things going on around the NBA, including 3 Game 2s tonight. Of course, Golden State and Denver. We'll dive into all of that as D'Lo and KC continue here on Sacramento's #1 sports station, ESPN 1320.
Holmes for Marcus Morris? No, you don't want a Morris twin. I know he's physical.
Everybody needs a little crazy.
I'm all for one of the Morris twins. Absolutely.
No. I'm just not down. I'm not a huge fan. Actually, if you want to trade with the Clippers, I think Holmes for Luke Kennard straight up makes a ton of sense. But then again, you have a lot of players like him, but he led the league in 3-point shooting, and you need more 3-point shooting, especially like knockdown 3-point shooters who can do a few other things.
I just looked up your boy Bojan, Kenny. He's 33 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's not young.
Yeah. And he's had moments, but like overall, he's a step below Harrison Barnes. He's a better pure scorer, I think. But even that would be in question. I mean, he and Barnes both can go off. But he doesn't defend. He's not a great rebounder at all. He doesn't pass the ball. So.
Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah. We ended up going out to dinner a couple of times.
Did you go to that steakhouse you were telling us about on Friday?
We did. So there's a new steakhouse in Nevada City. It's in an old building it used to be called the Trolley Junction. And to be honest with you, I can't even remember the name of it. But anyone who's in that area knows the Northern Queen Inn and the Trolley Junction. It's actually where it's crazy. We went in, and it's where we had our wedding rehearsal dinner. But 23 years ago. So yeah, it was cool to be back in an old spot, but that was good. We did Tap and Vine on Thursday night, which Tap and Vine is my spot in Auburn. My son works there, and it's a cool American bistro. Good drinks.
How old's your son again?
My son is 18.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he'll be 19 in May. My oldest, my youngest. Yeah. My youngest will be 15 in August. It's crazy because he's still a little guy and he hasn't, but he's 8 months away from having his learner's permit. And I'm oh no.
Oh, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff. August what?
31st.
Okay.
He's an old 8th grader, even though he's still 5 foot tall and a little guy. My Mini-Me. You've seen My Mini-Me.
Yes. And
yeah.
Yep. He definitely is that.
Yeah.
Random question. You guys like Indiana Jones? I don't think I've ever seen Indiana Jones.
I was going to say, I'll go ahead and throw it out there. I've never seen it.
What? You've never seen Indiana Jones?
No.
What is wrong with you? Seriously.
I've never seen it. I actually think I've been on the Indiana Jones ride. Like, is it at Universal Studios or
Universal? I don't even
I think I've been on that, but I haven't seen the movie.
That's at Disneyland. Yeah.
Oh, Disneyland? Okay.
Indiana Jones is at Disneyland. Yeah.
Maybe I've been on it at Disneyland.
Oh, I remember lining up when it came out at the theaters. Oh, so excited. And then the second one, which was dark as hell. There's 4, but the 4th one is not very good. And the 5th one is I think in post-production. So, but
really?
Yeah, wow. And Harrison Ford is he's either 79 or he's 80. Yeah, so he's got one more left in him.
We're coming back. Okay, so we're just, there's no fourth wall on this show. We'll just let you in. One, James is appalled that Kenny and I have never seen Indiana Jones. 2, this all started because Kenny asked the question. What made you ask if we'd ever seen Indiana Jones?
Because I'm watching MLB Network and they have a commercial for Intentional Talk that is themed around Indiana Jones with Kevin Millar and whoever the new guy is. The commercial is like an Indiana Jones theme, and I'm like, yeah, I've never seen this movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I knew what it was, obviously.
Those references.
I'm familiar with it, but
I've used those references on here.
You use a lot of references,
I do.
And I can tell you're making one, and I don't get it. Like
everyone else gets it.
Yeah, I know.
Like when you have Jason Jones on, and you call him Professor Jones.
The professor.
Yeah, there's a short round yells at Cape Capshaw. You call him Dr. Jones, doll, and yeah.
What movie is this?
I don't know what that is.
That's that's what I always think. I say that you call him Dr. Jones because you're talking about Jason Jones, but Indiana Jones short round is this young Asian kid that hangs out with him like all throughout the movie, and he feels like they're disrespecting Indiana Jones, who's a doctor, and so anyway, that's why.
James, these are just different cultures coming together and teaching each other.
I guess, man, you guys need to like have movie nights, man.
Like, have you seen House Party?
Of course, I've seen House Party.
Oh,
yes,
okay. I wasn't
yes, I've seen House Party.
Have you seen Paid in Full?
You.
If I saw the movie box, I could tell you.
You haven't seen Paid in Full. Paid in Full is in the streets. We'll get you. That's Kenny's favorite movie. It's
top 10 favorite movie.
It's as a cult following. Like that's what Paid in Full is a cult. The movie was made for like $10, right? And it did very well. And
okay, I'm looking at the box. Yeah. All right.
James,
maybe I haven't.
I swear to God, James just searched Paid in Full cover art.
Oh yeah, no, so I worked at a video store when I was young. I worked at a video store for a year, so I have almost a photographic memory when it comes to movie boxes and posters. So if I see the poster, I can tell you, and it triggers, and I can remember what the movie is. This one, I'm not sure that I saw. There's a good chance that I haven't.
And to be honest with you, James, I think that movie didn't even make it to the West Coast till like 3 years after it came out.
Yeah, there are direct to DVD movies. This movie was just direct to the streets.
Direct to the streets.
You couldn't even get this
barbershop.
Well, it's Omar Epps, isn't it? Am I wrong?
No, that's Mekhi Phife.
Oh, you're right. You're right. You know, and I think I get those guys.
You're not the only one who's made that mistake.
Because weren't they were both on ER, like I believe. Yeah.
Maybe. I know Omar Epps was on what's the show with the
What's the show?
tortured genius doctor.
Oh, House.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Omar Epps was on House.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
And I think Mekhi Phifer was on ER.
Yeah, I think he either got hit by a train or something. Like he was
Spoiler alert.
an intern, but then it went bad. Yeah, it went bad for him.
Yeah,
I'm
on that-
sorry for Mekhi Phifer, but I can't get the vision of him in that stupid ass dreadlock wig
Oh,
from 8 Mile out of my head.
Gee.
Like whoever
That's
like
all
made the
bad.
he should have said no, like I'm not doing this. Like I'm not putting that on my head. This is
My regular
terrible.
hair is just fine.
Like,
I don't
yeah.
need-
Yeah.
Let's
I'm
bring it
hip-
back around. James, are you watching Winning Time?
No, I haven't got into it. I've been told I have to get into it.
Yep.
Nah, it's great.
have
I
a
was just going
hard
to say the guy who's in Paid in Full is Spencer Haywood in Winning Time.
Oh.
The guy.
Well, James knows who that is. Like he's in Remember the Titans. Like he's in all sorts of.
Yeah. I've
Yeah,
seen him.
Harris
I've
is
seen him before. I don't see who the third actor is. I don't know the third actor.
No, he's a goat. He's a goat.
Is that Cameron?
He's a goat.
He's not an actor. That's why you don't
one of the
recognize
best
him.
rappers of our generation.
Okay, calm down.
I had a buddy who was in you remember Cradle to the Grave, which is I think DMX and Jet
DMX.
Li?
Yeah.
Okay, so in the cage fight scene, one of my buddies who's this gigantic human being, like he's like a baby Huey guy, like 6'5", like 300 pounds, but natural. Like he's just gigantic. And he was one of the bouncers in that scene. Oh, did I lock up again? Oh no, there we go.
That's a one-time watch for me. I haven't seen it again.
Yeah.
I think I saw it in
Yeah.
theaters, but I haven't seen it since then. No.
Yes, I've
Kenny
seen New
mentioned
Jack
Winning
City.
Time.
People keep asking if I've seen these movies. Yes, I've seen most of these movies. Yes.
We're testing James's street credentials today. Have you seen the uncut version of Menace to Society?
I've seen Menace to the Society, but I'm not sure if the uncut version. Yeah.
I had a good transition too.
I said
and
something
lost
about
it.
Winning Time.
Oh, Winning Time. Yes, because I was going to transition us back to basketball. Last night's episode, it airs on Sundays. It couldn't have been planned more perfectly. Last night's episode of Winning Time takes you to the Lakers that year, that first trip, Magic Johnson's first trip to Boston to take on Larry Bird, and coming on the heels of the Brooklyn Nets Boston Celtics game and the Kyrie Irving versus the Boston Celtics fans, it was a spectacular tie-in that couldn't have been planned any better by HBO and the NBA. They couldn't have lucked out any more than they did. But stepping away from the Kings here for a second, I mean, I'm sure you were locked into all of the playoff games this weekend. What'd you think about the Celtics and the Nets?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many good series, and the Celtics came up big. The Celtics are the wild card, right? They're the team that was really good a couple of years ago, and then kind of fell off, and their young talent kind of got lost in the shuffle. And all of a sudden, you're realizing that they have two of the best young players in the league, and they just have so much talent. And it came down to a big time shot by a big time player. I love it because I'm not a huge Kyrie guy at all. And he's about to write like a huge check to the league. He went off on a fan, he went off in his post game, and I get it. Some of that stuff is, like I've been covering this team forever. It's not like there haven't been fans who have said stuff to Demarcus, or he hasn't said. I mean, he's said plenty of things to fans as well.
Right.
But there's always that sort of vibe around the league where there are people who just say whatever they want and start these little beefs and stuff with players. I think it's fine as long as it's good spirited and the players having a good time with it. But that never works in Utah. Like they always take it too far, and there's always a bunch of. So I don't know. Like the basketball is really good right now. I think some of these series are pretty lopsided. Like the next round is going to be spectacular. But I'm intrigued to see, especially this Golden State Denver series. I think it's got so much intrigue because, you think that the Warriors are just going to, if they're on fire, there's nothing you can do. But if they're not, then, Jokic just is unstoppable. And so I think it should be an interesting, couple of weeks here as we build up to the end.
Is Jokic your MVP?
Yeah, he's my MVP. Okay. Yeah. I think it's always close, and you look at all these stats that these guys are putting up. But what Jokic has done is, we've never seen a big man do this much. I mean, it's crazy how good he is, and he deserved it last year, and I think he deserves it again this year, especially when you consider that Michael Porter Jr. and Murray have been out most of the season, if not all the season in Murray's case. I think he does because he's just doing so much with so little. And it's going to be tough for him to escape the first round of the playoffs, but that speaks to, the team around him just isn't quite there because of the injuries.
With the Kyrie thing, do you have, and Damon, you can answer this too. Can you remember a more intense player-city rivalry that I don't think this is stopping anytime soon? And I say that because obviously the one time Durant came back to OKC or LeBron back to LeBron, well, those are dead now. I don't think Kyrie and Boston are going to like each other forever. And I'm trying to think of a more intense player city rivalry than this one. I can't think of one. The only one that comes close, and once again, it was more of a moment as opposed to forever, was remember the heat that John Rocker had in New York?
Oh yeah.
And
yeah,
that was
the wrong kind of heat though.
Yeah.
He
went off the deep end. And I would say, I'm not saying anybody should get hurt, but he deserved all the vitriol he got when he came into Shea Stadium. But that's the only one that comes to my mind. And once again, that didn't even last the way I feel like this Kyrie Boston thing is going to last.
Yeah.
I think the original time that LeBron left Cleveland, that was bitter. And people burned his jerseys all over.
Well, that was kind of a one-off. And I don't think there will ever be anything worse than that. A one-night only thing. There will never be anything worse than LeBron going back to Cleveland. That was actually gross. That wasn't even that was extra.
Yeah. And I know here in Sacramento, anytime that Spencer Hawes walks in the building, Spencer Hawes could walk in.
Your answer right there.
I don't know. He could.
Yes.
Yeah. That dude gets booed. Jason Terry gets booed in Sacramento. Yeah, he always got booed, and that's because he went on the radio and talked trash about Sacramento, even though they didn't even make him play here. They traded him here, and then they released him so he could go sign with the playoff team. He was just a bad sport about it. So, and there's a couple of players like that really do get booed. Valanciunas is going to get booed here for a long time, I think still.
It's I don't think it's hatred. I actually think it's fun. It's actually, and I could be wrong on this. I think it fits the spirit of what James was talking about a few minutes ago. But Trey in the Garden now.
Yeah.
I love that you unmuted in mid crunch. I'm sorry. That's funny. Kenny, for those that listen to the show, for those that don't watch the show, Kenny eats the entire last hour. And he got caught in mid crunch right there.
Gotta get my power back.
Carb loading over here.
That one is fun. That reminds me of Reggie Miller in New York.
Sure.
That 30 for 30 they did with Reggie. Well, I don't even know if it was Reggie in New York. It was actually, wasn't it Spike in Indiana, which was crazy. They needed a lot of security for Spike in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Not surprising.
Yeah, I think New York always has a good battle with somebody, and that's a lot of it's in fun. I
don't ever feel like New York is. I think New York's venom is saved for their own players. If they're booing someone, that's as a rivalry. That's how they take it. It's a rivalry. If you're on the street, it's hey, good run or whatever. If it's their own player, oh, they're F you, you're the worst, you're a bum, you're this, you're that. But if it's an opposing player, I think it's generally, something that they have fun with.
And to the point, like, I think all these are like one-offs. Like I said,
Kyrie's on a couple years now.
Yeah, and it's not ending anytime soon. He goes back next year, it's going to be the same way. Like, that's the crazy thing to me.
Yeah. Isn't it wild how a player like Isaiah Thomas is so revered there? He's revered here in Sacramento, but then the way that he's treated outside of, like, the fact that he can't stick in the league anymore and stuff like that. There's just a weird dynamic where some players, it doesn't matter how long they're away, they come back into a city and they're just completely cherished. And then other players that are in a city for such a short time, they're just hated completely. It's just weird dynamic.
Sean with a great one. Vince in Toronto that went on for some years. Vince in Toronto went on for some years. And they've made up since. Like, I think it's one of his last years in the league. They made up, great applause. He had great things to say about Toronto. But that's a good one. They have venom from him for a minute.
Well, it's certainly an extra dynamic, and talk about an added dynamic. Jordan Poole into this Golden State Warriors lineup now, where we don't really know what the status of Steph Curry is going to be tonight in terms of whether he's going to start, whether he's going to come off the bench. I assume you're not on a 1-game minutes restriction, so I got to assume he's on a minutes restriction tonight, even if it's up over the 21, I think, that he played the other night. But I mean, how do you feel about the Warriors overall headed into this Western Conference playoff run? And did you see anything in that first game against Denver that makes you think, oh, this team could be dangerous?
Yeah, you're always just waiting for that moment when they get healthy, and then can they become the Warriors who they were before? And they've kept guys in reserve all season long, guys like Iguodala. So if you need him in a big moment, maybe you still have somebody there. But if Clay continues to get back in basketball shape and work through his stuff, if again Draymond can stay healthy and can get sort of back into the flow as well. I think they're as dangerous as any team in the West. They're the old dog. They know how to do it. And they and way better than almost anyone else. So if you start seeing 30-point nights, dueling banjos between Steph and Clay, and then on top of that you still have Wiggins and you still have guys like Poole, and Poole is just playing so well. He's making himself so much money. Good for him. I mean, he's just done a tremendous job of improving his game and getting better and better. But he's also in a system that makes sense. And, that's a incredible head coach there with a big time staff. And they're gonna have their team ready each and every night. I kind of feel bad for Denver just because they're so unhealthy, and they can't get everyone back in the flow and time to really make a run. And then you face a team that's just so trained and so well versed in what this process is.
Where do you stand after like the first weekend of the NBA playoffs? Do you feel like the Golden State Denver is a perfect example? I think. Do you think there's things that we saw right away, like, oh, well, this isn't going to happen? Maybe some people feel that way about Pelicans and Suns, right? Like, this is not even going to be close. Or is it just
That'd
like
be me?
Yeah. Or is it just a situation where, kind of a bit of an overreaction to a lot of stuff, right? Like, I think the Warriors Nuggets series will be closer than that first game indicated. I don't think it's going 7, but I think we'll have some tight games. I think maybe it goes 6 or something like that. But I think it'll be closer. But a lot of people after the first game are like, oh, Warriors are back. Jordan Poole, Steph Curry, like, Nuggets have no shot. I think it'll be a little closer. Where do you stand on some of these reactions or overreactions after game ones?
Yeah, game ones are always rough. You never read too much into game one. I mean, how many times does the Warriors go down 3-1 and come back and win a series? I think it was twice in 1 year that they erased 3-1 deficits. Like, teams that know how to play at this time of year, sometimes they slow play a little bit in the first round just to get their sea legs and get themselves like going. The teams that are really good but haven't been there before, they like to go 4-0, 4-0 and just try to run the table. I think that the other teams that have been there, they like a little bit of a slow burn. They like to get everybody like in the flow of what this means, what this feels like, what it should feel like, how long TV timeouts are, just the whole process. That it's such a huge thing when a young team gets into the playoffs and all of a sudden they're like, why are we standing on the court for like 3 minutes and that other team over there that's been here before is just sitting down, hanging out, drinking water, getting ready. And we're over here with all this nervous energy on the court, like burning valuable energy. And so there's such a learning curve to the playoffs. And it's kind of like what I wrote about, like people who are discrediting what the play-in tournament has meant. Now look what it's done for some of these teams. Look at the confidence that Minnesota just shot out of a cannon. I mean, the confidence that you get if you're in New Orleans by winning 2 games, these are things that carry over. I mean, you're getting it. New Orleans just took such a huge leap ahead of the Kings. It's not even funny. And it's because they made the play in. Everyone laughed. Oh, look, they're backing in. You got 33 wins or 34 wins. I mean, that's not really a playoff team until you get there and you learn that what it's like to be in the playoffs. And, a play-in tournament is not considered playoffs for for players like bonuses and stuff. So it's not really the playoffs, but it sure does feel like it. And it sure does feel like experience that you wish teams were getting. And then you watch a team like Cleveland who just folds twice, right? That's just showing their youth. And now they know what that feels like, and they'll come back next year and they'll be better. And that's why I think there is so much value to trying to push to get into the play-in, even if you're a team like the Kings this year that, you didn't have a great shot, but also is going to hurt you a little bit in the draft. You move down 2 spots probably that you could have tanked completely. It still would have been hard to fully hold on to the 5th spot. But I definitely think that there's such a tremendous experience value to these teams.
The value of the play-in tournament was one thing that you wrote about in yesterday's edition of Sunday Musing. Go subscribe to the Kings Beat newsletter at thekingsbeat.com. Another thing that you wrote about, and you talked about a little bit on this show last week, was Wes Wilcox and how he could play a factor or will play a factor almost certainly into this coaching search. And you wrote how Kenny Atkinson, Darvin Ham, and Charles Lee, they've all been mentioned as coaching candidates, and they were all on Mike Budenholzer's staff when Wes Wilcox was in Atlanta. I want to focus specifically on Kenny Atkinson just for a second, because Kenny Atkinson, unless I'm missing something, he just had the one job in Brooklyn. But he's a guy that I feel like a lot of Kings fans are high on. What's the big upside with Kenny Atkinson?
Well, the biggest thing with him is that he is known as a developer of talent, especially point guards. He's a guy who's helped bring along players. And I know, talking on the podcast about him with Brendan, Brendan always says, he's a guy that if you go and look, that most of the players that play for him have their best seasons and play above expectations, as opposed to a lot of Kings players who historically play below expectations. And I mean, I could list a million different free agents that come into Sacramento and play below what they have done their entire career. All of a sudden they get to Sacramento and it's like someone hit them in the head with a sledgehammer and they can't play basketball anymore. Yeah, well, I mean, but there's so many of them. I mean, I would like to tell you it's just Marco Bellinelli. Yeah, but, by the end, even a guy like Costa Koufis, which I just absolutely adore Costa, he kept accepting that the Kings were just going to bench him the last 30 games of the season while they brought up young players and developed them. So you see a guy who has career stats of one thing, and then by the time he's out of Sacramento, his career stats are gone, and you're like, wow, what happened? But it's something that typically happens in Sacramento. Guys underperform. So I think when you get a guy like Kenny Atkinson, he does have a tendency to bring the best out, to maximize the talent. And at some point, the Kings need somebody like that and develop talent. Whether he's going to be an elite head coach, I think that's the biggest question mark. It's his career path doesn't look all that much different than a guy like, Luke Walton, who had one unsuccessful venture, but it, of course, was with a young team that didn't have the stars. He developed young players, and guys like Karis LeVert like starred under him, Spencer Dinwiddie. They really like found Joe Harris. Those guys all found themselves under Kenny Atkinson. But then as soon as they got really good players, they moved on from him and went a different direction. And so I think that that's a big draw. And since then, what he's worked on 2 different staffs. He's in Golden State this year, but he was somewhere else last year, another high-end staff. And he's, very highly regarded. And to me, it's really crazy how Budenholzer has like this huge coaching tree already. And it's all, again, I tied it when we were talking on Friday, I tied it to the Greg Popovich coaching tree, because that's where Budenholzer comes from. And so you have this but if you had a coaching staff that at one time had Quinn Snyder, at one time had, Charles Lee, Darvin Ham, who's the coach for Memphis, Taylor Jenkins, and of course Kenny Atkinson. All of those guys on one staff, that staff is crazy good. And they're all young and they're developing as coaches, but now I think we're still seeing that a lot of teams are looking at that coaching tree and saying, okay, there's a lot to like there. Just like there's a lot to like from the Daryl Morey, general manager tree that we've seen, like guys like Monty McNair here in Sacramento, but all around the league, you're seeing his guys doing really
except
well.
for Daryl Morey.
Yeah,
right. I don't know if I want any fruit from the Daryl Morey.
He did get his man, and he
did. That's true. He did. We'll see if it gets him anything, but
yeah.
He did.
Ham, is there anyone that you've heard or even that you had heard that intrigues you? Like, I know you don't necessarily care who they get, you just want them to win, but is there somebody that intrigues you as a possible coaching candidate here in Sacramento?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because I think where they're at is such a difficult spot. Like, whoever you get, you need 100% buy-in from the front office. That's what I would say. Like, if they feel like it's the right person and the person who's ready, I kind of would lean towards somebody who has experience, although I would hate to, miss on a Darvin Ham or a Charles Lee. I think Charles Lee's only like 37. I'd hate to miss on one of those guys. But I also know that the way that this franchise has gone, like, I don't think that they will show the patience that, say, Boston did with Ime Udoka when they struggled, or that the Pelicans did with
for a whole half a season.
Yeah, but look what Willie Green started, 1-13?
Yeah.
And there was all kinds of talk that, he probably wasn't ready, and you're probably going to see a coaching change after 1 year, and now they would be paying, so many coaches that weren't hired anymore. But then I also look at the situation that, like, Stan Van Gundy when he went to the Pelicans. It's just like, that's a disaster. You have to avoid the disasters. So, I think that there are plenty of coaches here. You're gonna have your choice of like 4 or 5 really, really good, either up and coming or seasoned veteran coaches. And you're also only competing right now with the Lakers for a head coaching job. So maybe the Lakers get the cream of the crop. Maybe they go like a guy like Mark Jackson. Maybe they do something completely strange. And someone brings up in the chatty house, Sam Cassell. Sam Cassell has not been mentioned at all in relations to the Kings. And I'm not sure why, because he's another guy who not only was a player, but has really done well on coaching staffs over the last couple of years. He's been on some incredibly high-end coaching staffs, and being with Doc Rivers is a good place to be. But, when you're with Doc Rivers, you're also with a guy like Dave Yeager, who is one of the best X's and O's guys you're going to come across. So if you're an assistant coach and you get to go train with, go work with a guy in a room like Dave Yeager every day, you should be able to pick up a lot of knowledge, a lot of different things. And Dave can learn a lot from Sam Cassell as a player. So like some of these staffs that we've seen around the league are just absolutely spectacular. And the Kings probably should look at really good staffs and see if they can get one of their really good up and coming or, seasoned assistants, like what we're seeing with, guys like Kenny Atkinson, Mike Brown, and all those guys that are with Steve Kerr.
More from like Vivek's circle of people and Vivek himself. Do you think Mike Malone sits in the back of their mind? Like, we hired a young coach who was sought out across the league, and we got him. And we gave up too soon. We made it arguably the worst decision we've made in the last decade. And we see what he's become now. Do you think that at all, even if quietly not admitted, would play a factor in young and up and coming versus old and established? Or I shouldn't say old, but established?
Yeah, I think the problem that I see is that like Michael Malone has proven that Vivek was right when he hired him the first time, not when he fired him. I mean, the firing him was like, again, just one of the worst basketball decisions that you're ever going to run into. Mm-hmm. I mean, you had a team with 100% buy-in that was playing really well. Like they were you had 100% buy-in when you literally have someone that like will not buy in for 99% of the others, which is Demarcus Cousins. So like when you get a guy who is able to capture the room, that's always been my standard for when a coach has to go. He has to go when he loses the room. And that doesn't mean like one or two players. And I think that, sometimes the Kings listen too much. Well, I know they listen too much to the noise. Guys like Dave Yeager had, one or two guys in the locker room that really, especially Bagley and Buddy, that neither one really cared for his style. But those guys were wrong. That's an exceptional coach. You won 39 games. The fact that they haven't won 39 games, they've won 39 games once in 16 years, and it was with him, it shows you how good he was, and with a team that wasn't ready at all. So what could he have done the next year? What could he have done the year after that? And so you have to like pick the right guy now and stick with him and stick with Monty and give them a chance to grow together. Give this thing 2-3 years. Let it play itself out, because the constant switching and changing and, all these assistants and all of, again, it wasn't just, we talked about that. It wasn't just Alvin Gentry that lost his job on Monday, but Ken Catanella, their salary cap guy, lost his job on Monday, an assistant GM. An assistant GM is a huge part of an NBA franchise, and so is a lead trainer. They fired their head trainer and Joe Resendez, and that, like, what are we doing? And they let go of one of their media relations guys, and Alex Sigua, and like why? Why are we always? That's part of the continuity of a franchise. This is part of it. Mm-hmm. All of these pieces mean something. You let go of an equipment manager, everyone's like, oh, it's just an equipment manager. You go talk to the players about an equipment manager, because I know the Kings' former equipment manager needed a heart transplant surgery, and if I'm not mistaken, one of the players has helped out enormously on the backside. And like, these people are family, and every single offseason, it's just like someone takes a bowling ball and shakes up all the pins, knocks down half the pins. And so it's always, switching out, and just like commit to something. That's what I keep telling him, but just like find someone that you believe in now, and stick with them and let them grow through things, and let them have the bad times and the good times, and hope that you have more good times than bad. But then maybe we have less bad times the next year and the next year, unless someone walks in the door and is just egregiously bad and oversold you. And if that's the case, then you need to walk away too, because you're the one who hired him.
Well, I agree with everything you said there, James, and just hope they get it right. Just really do hope they get it right.
Yeah.
On the side note, we talked about the rivalries that'll never die. We say Kyrie and Boston is just never going to die, right? Like, they hate each other. Well, there's another one that'll never die. Demarcus Cousins, Hoop Central. We all know what he said. What did Sack do for me? Besides, no. We all know what he said.
By the way, Mark Spears joins the show tomorrow at 2:00.
There we go. George Karl's weighed in.
Oh, boy.
Quote tweet, paid you approximately $50 million and gave you the opportunity to play professional basketball for a living. Big eyes and a thinking face emoji. George Karl did not miss an opportunity to
that's a good call. George Karl versus Demarcus Cousins lasts forever. That's a good call right there.
Yeah.
Your thoughts on
James, hit us with it.
Okay, so
yeah.
I'll just take the George Karl situation out of it, because let's be honest, like at a certain point, if you can't see that George Karl and Demarcus Cousins are never going to get along before you hire George Karl, then I don't know what that says about you.
Yeah.
That means that you don't know the game of basketball.
Or you
More
don't
than
know
that,
people.
it tells you don't know people.
That's it.
No, that's what it means. It means you don't know people at all.
Yeah.
You don't know people. You shouldn't be hiring people because you're not good at that. So I'm going to put that on Pete D'Alessandro. He had a relationship with George from their time together in Denver. But it wasn't just George that had issues. So like, I don't want to rehash all the time, but like that was a rough stretch. You know, I remember having a conversation with Demarcus years ago, and he said, like, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do it my way every step of the way. And I said, but Demarcus, you have to understand that your way at 19 and your way at 21 and your way at 24 and your way at 27, those are all going to be different ways, because you're going to grow and change as a person, and it's going to be different. And it was almost like he was clinging that he had to do it his way, and his way was the only way. And he kept dragging it out way too long, where his way was the only way, well beyond the, he like 19-year-old, but in a 24-year-old man's body now. And, again, like I really enjoyed covering Demarcus. I think he's like outside of basketball, he actually does have a good heart. He has like anger management issues that, like, I mean, we can look around and see like the other stuff that's gone on with him outside of basketball and stuff. But still, I mean, in Sacramento, he's a guy that paid for funerals and paid for scoreboards and donated tons of time and money. And, like even Santa's, I know my guy, Sean Cunningham, was with him at Walmart doing Santa's when it was announced that Michael Malone was fired on a Sunday right before Christmas. And just like the stunned and I can't believe this is happening type stuff. So the Kings didn't do him any favors, and he's right. I think he is incorrect that he did not have 7 coaches. I think he had 6 coaches in his time in Sacramento, because it's Westfall, Smart, Malone, Corbin, and Karl, and then Jaeger. So 6 coaches, but still the instability of the franchise was he is the exact wrong player to have in an unstable environment. The exact wrong player. Like there are players you can have in unstable environments and they can work their way through. A guy like Tyrese Halliburton, just like, he's going to be able to survive no matter what. But some guys, like it wasn't the right place for him to grow up in the NBA. And I mean, to that, he's right. It was not the right place for him to grow up. So
Hall of Famer?
No, sorry. Like, he had potential to be a Hall of Famer, but the injury wiped him out, and what's happened afterwards, where he's on 1-year deals or 10-day contracts and stuff at age 30, 31, 32. Like, I don't think so. But he should have been. And like my first interview with him ever, I asked him, "Are you going to be an All-Star?" He said, "Yes." So where are you going to be in 5 years? He said, "Hopefully the best big man in the league." I said, "Are you going to be a Hall of Famer?" He said, "That's the plan." And the Achilles like did him in. So,
that Pelicans team that's a tremendous what if, right? Because if he stays healthy, what does that team do? What's that mean for Anthony Davis?
Mm-hmm.
What's it mean for Alvin Gent? Like what the domino effect to the Demarcus Cousins injury? And that team, memory serves me correctly, I feel like that was maybe around the midseason mark that his Achilles popped. I remember it was against Houston. I remember that vividly, but they wound up. I mean, they still went to the playoffs. They had I feel like a decent run, but they were playing
at Portland, I think, that year.
They were playing their best basketball when Demarcus went down.
I'll just say this. I don't think that they would have brought him back. I don't think they would have given him the deal that he was hoping to get. And that will tell you that it didn't matter. That stuff didn't matter.
Okay, we're running out of time. So maybe you can clear this up, because I've never understood this too. I had heard something similar, that maybe it wasn't as lovely with everyone involved as it was made out to be. Did the Pelicans offer him a contract to come back after he was injured?
There was a rumor of a 2-year, $40 million contract.
And I've
up.
never heard it validated by anybody.
No, but that I believe was put out from his people. That was like they were trying to set a market value for him. Yeah, I don't think he would have been back.